Welcome, guys. This is computer audio Q&A. This is the fun part for me. I don't have to come up with some script and tell you guys what you don't want to know or what you already know. So it's kind of for you guys, for everyone here. And I'm by far no expert in the stuff. The more you know you don't know. So I'm sure I can't answer every question. And I'm sure every question could be a 2-hour answer, if you want to dig into it even more. So questions from what is a computer to, as difficult as you want, and I'll try to answer them. And the chances are, if you have a question, so does 70% of the other people here. So don't worry about asking something easy or something too hard, and we'll get there. So we'll start here.
How did you get into this? First of all, and is this your day job?
This is my day job, and my night job.
And your weekend job.
And my weekend job, yes. A little bit about my background is I was in enterprise information technology with switches, routers, firewalls, enterprise storage, and networks, desktops, you name it. And I've always been an audiophile. And when it came time to start using music servers, I wasn't, the information that I wanted wasn't out there. And I figured, I'll just do it myself. So I just created the site, Computer Audiophile. And once I was happy with the quality I could get out of a music server, then it was kind of like full on, let's do this thing. The first stuff coming out, it wasn't very good in my opinion, but now it's great. So, does that help? Yeah.
The stuff you're talking about on Friday, and all of it has been pretty much implicit, two-channel.
Yes.
Can you talk about what, if anything, is there support for 5.1 surround goodies, including ripped SACDs, if you can figure out how to do it and all that?
Okay, the question is about 5.1 or surround or ripped SACDs and all that kind of stuff. I do not know much about 5.1, and there is not much out there.
Okay.
And in terms of ripping an SACD, no, it'll never happen.
We got
But
some ways by walking
you can take the stream and capture that, but sticking the SACD into your computer and ripping it.
Oh, no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. So what some people are doing on my site are using like an oppo and outputting HDMI to an Altona box, which will split the audio from the video and then capturing it. So haven't used it yet.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's legal. No clue. So.
Yeah, because if anybody wants to see one of those, that's one of my, Van Alst, Fred Van Alstyne's got one of his. Right. It was neat to have a look at.
Yeah.
But that one wouldn't do a 5.1 rip.
Probably not. Probably not.
Probably just a 2-channel.
Yeah, probably just 2-channel.
Yeah.
So the question does come up a lot. How do I rip my SACDs and that? But so far, no. DVD audio, though, that's a different story. You can rip almost every one of those discs. There's a couple different products out there that do it. There's like DVD Explorer, DVD Audio Extractor. There's a few. One you pay for, one's free, one works well, one doesn't. What's that?
Can you do 5.1?
You can see the 5.1 data on the disc. I've never tried to rip it, and I don't know if it'll come as one file or if you have to pull several.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
A good source of high-res material is DVD audio discs. That's where I get a lot of mine. So, yeah.
It'll convert the 5.1 channel to 2-channel, and then you can extract the 2-channel as high-res. Just the same way a DVD audio player would do it.
You're still back to the 2-channel.
Exactly, but they sound wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you haven't heard Beatles Love and Surround DVD, you need to hear that someplace, because it's fantastic.
Okay.
What was the free software for that?
What's that?
You said there was a free software app.
Yeah. There's a free software. DVD Explorer, I believe, is the free one. And be careful when you do some Google searches for it. You'll come up with some interesting sites. Just be careful. DVD audio extractor. Let me see. I'm running Windows and Mac on this machine here, so it'll help. DVD Audio Extractor is the paid-for app. DVD Audio Explorer is the free app. And I like DVD Audio Extractor, the paid app, better. I think it works better. It's easier to use. But, that's just my preference. These are for Windows, too. DVD A Explorer, the free app, there is a Mac version, but I've never got it to work. So, just some people have, I never have. So, just an FYI. Yes?
Are the major labels coming out with 24-bit downloads?
Yeah.
Such as?
Who do you call major?
Well, like London, BGG.
They're everyone who says they're in the know, oh yeah, it's coming, and they're archiving it all right now, and here's the converters they're using. They all say, yeah, it's coming, but we'll see. Somebody was talking to me. I'm like, well, why wouldn't they do it? There's a lot of money to be made. But once they sell you that, they can't sell you another format, really. It's easy to buy the disc after you bought the cassette and the record, but once you have the 2496, for now, for the foreseeable future, it's it seems to be it. So, just one theory. Yes.
Okay, can we talk a little bit about bit perfect output under certain circumstances? Windows 7 on a PC with a sound card, and you have to set Windows for exclusive mode and use an ASIO driver.
Okay.
So far, so good?
32 or 64-bit.
Okay.
64-bit.
There's your problem.
Well, it's 32 and 64, isn't it?
No, I've had the same problem like Apple and iTunes and QuickTime. You can't select a Wasabi driver in 64-bit, but you can on 32-bit.
So.
Windows 7 was always 32 or 64.
Okay, so like bit transparency output, like specifically you want to know. I mean, do you want in general or what's
specific to? I guess it's going to be Windows 7, and it's
Yep.
going to be this sound card, this ASUS sound card. Now,
which one? The Zonar?
Yeah.
HDAV or STX, ST?
Zonar Essence ST.
Okay, sure,
Right.
I have one.
Okay, so then what?
How to get bit transparent output of that one?
Yeah.
Or-
And then let's switch over to the application side. Can iTunes do it or not?
Okay. So the Asus Zonar cards, they're a very inexpensive way to get pretty good digital output. I have a couple of them. I'll publish a review pretty soon. When they first came out, the software that came with them always changed the bits before the digital stream was output. And I talked to Asus about it for quite a while, and they're very dedicated in getting the stuff right and competing with some of the higher dollar audio cards. So they did release an ASIO driver, and just make sure you go into the software settings for the Zonar card, and just make sure that you're selecting a digital output, and so yeah, do that, and then say JRiver Media Center. If you go into JRiver Media Center and select the ASIO output and select the card, then you're good.
So you're saying JRiver is really the preferred application? Then?
Yeah, if you're on Windows, I do not recommend using iTunes.
You don't want to mess around with iTunes. How about Windows
Media player?
Media Player?
Same thing as iTunes.
Same thing.
See, what they don't give you is the ability to select output modes like ASIO, Wasabi, or kernel streaming, which are all similar ways of sending audio directly to your card. So if the app doesn't give you that ability, it's pretty tough. I mean, you could get bit perfect output. I'm not saying it's impossible, but JRiver Media Center to me is the best application on Windows right now, and it's very, very cool because the people that run the company listen to what audiophiles say and have made some very cool changes very quickly.
You need this advanced ASIO driver, or the latest ASIO driver, or does it not really matter because it's using Wasabi natively?
Well, you could use Wasabi too, or kernel streaming, yeah. So you don't necessarily need that. Yeah,
You don't necessarily need the ASIO driver. You could just get JRiver with what Wasabi.
Yeah, or or use the ASIO driver. Doesn't matter. There could be a sound difference. If you hear one in either of the three, then go with which one you like.
And then to play Apple lossless files using JRiver, trying to get them perfect, you need some kind of other script in there or something.
Oh yeah. There's a plugin. I can't think of what it's called right now. Somebody's got to know it.
That's a barrier, right? You need an extra piece.
For Apple lossless, there is a plugin. Somebody was just talking about it on the site to play it. But every other, I guess I don't see a reason to use Apple lossless if you're going to use JRiver on Windows. But if you are, no problem.
Library there of those things.
Sure.
You see, the purpose for one good purpose for iTunes is to get your Apple TV loaded up. It's one way to transport it to another room.
Sure. If you use JRiver Media Center and the app called, I believe it's called Asset UP&P, you can stream audio to Airport Express units from JRiver. They show up as different zones, and so you can send different music to different zones, same music to all zones. It's a pretty cool product. Some people have had problems with it, but I've never had a problem with it. It has worked every time for me. So, and then you can use Plug Player on an iPhone to select your music and send it to other rooms. I mean, it's pretty powerful, and you don't have to reconfigure an Airport Express. So if you have an Airport Express that works for your other computers at home, or so the kids are on Macs and you want it to work for them, fine. You just install Asset UP&P. It installs as a Windows service and just runs automatic, and you're good. So it's very cool.
I'll start by saying Windows to exclusive mode. Are there any other major tricks in Windows that you do before you get to the application side?
Honestly, I go into Windows sound preferences and I set the, I check exclusive mode and all that kind of jazz, but I set the sample rate to output to something that I will never use, like, 2448. I don't have any content at 2448. So when I'm playing back my music, if it shows up at 2448, I know I'm doing something wrong, because that means it's going through the Windows audio system. Because Windows will resample to whatever it's set at. So to me, it's kind of one way of telling you, something's up. So if you're using ASIO and JRiver, whatever sample rate you play, it's just going to send that right to the card, right to the ASUS card. So you don't have to worry about what Windows sample rate says or anything like that. So, yeah, right behind you.
I'm using Windows 7 with ASIO and an outboard 24192 DAC. And I can play 1644.1 audio, no problem, works great. But if I try to send 2496, I get a hardware incompatibility issue. But if I use direct sound or wave out, they play.
Yeah, they're just resampling. What DAC are you using?
YBA.
A YBA DAC. How did you say you're outputting out of your computer? USB. Okay. Do you know what sample rate and bit word length or whatever that supports?
No, and I'm not sure how to find out.
Okay.
It's about a 2-year-old Toshiba laptop.
It won't be your laptop that's the problem.
Okay.
It'll be your DAC.
Okay, well, the DAC's supposed to be able to handle anything up to 24192.
Sure, the DAC chip itself can, I'm sure.
Right.
But the USB interface, that's going to be the holdup. Do you have any other? Yeah. Do you have any other digital inputs on your DAC?
Yeah, it's got coax. I can try that.
Yeah. You can get a USB to coax converter and try that.
And if it works through coax but not through USB, then it's a limitation of the DAC.
Yeah. What model DAC is it?
WD202.
Okay. I'll find it here. Multitask. Next. Yeah.
More general question. Mac side, you're running pure music. Is the best output whatever is native to the DAC? Let's say your CDs only, which are 1644.1, right? And pure music gives you multiple output options, 96, so on and so forth. Should your output be whatever your DAC is designed for? In other words, you shouldn't upsample before the DAC. Isn't that correct?
Well, it's all what you want to do, and that is probably, you could probably have a 10-hour session at AES conference, and some of that is outside of my knowledge base. But the way I do it is I output whatever sample rate of frequency the audio is. If it's 96, I get it to my DAC at 96. That way it's bit transparent. I haven't changed anything. So what your DAC does with it, is what it does if your DAC upsamples, whatever. That's just the way I do it. If you change it, if you upsample or downsample on your computer, it's a matter of what's doing better up or downsampling, your computer or your DAC. So,
But it's not the computer, it's Pure Music software that's doing the upsampling. And he's claiming that's better than a hardware solution. Like 2 times 44 is 88. He recommends using that. And it's all in his software.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different software that will do it. I mean, it's either the computer does it or the DAC does it, whether it's Pure Music, iTunes, Audio MIDI. The computer's doing it or the DAC's doing it. So, I always say, listen to it for yourself. Who knows? Whatever you like, it's fine. Yeah.
A cheapskate version of the question that was asked in back just a moment ago. Do you need for Windows 7 an external board to get bit perfect output, or could you do it right off the motherboard if they have digital outs?
You can do it right off the motherboard if you want. Yeah.
Was a constraint.
I'm not saying you're going to get everything out. The ones that I've used, I've struggled to get 88.2, 176.4, 192. It's very spotty. If you play 16.44.1, you can probably output bit perfect from the board. Sound quality, it will be up to you if you like it or not.
Well, okay, so that kind of gets to the crux of the question there. So bit perfect output, I agree, is the objective.
Yep.
So can you get? It sounds like you can get that out.
Yeah, you can, but I'm not going to say.
But not necessarily at every bit rate.
Yeah, it's not as easy, or as external DAC. It seems to just be easy. The output is probably like SPDIF coax or optical.
Yeah, those are the only two.
Yeah, it's.
Well, or I
it's
guess
sketchy.
Literally HDMI in a lot of cases is an option. Too. I don't know if that's good or not. But.
Yeah, it's an option.
What about on a relay? What about HDMI and jitter? What's your take on
That's I ask 5 engineers and you'll get 10 different answers, and they'll each take 10 hours.
Okay.
And every engineer will say the other ones are wrong, So that's way beyond my knowledge base.
Okay.
Hey, could you discuss in more general terms the differences between Pure Music and Amara, and how much of a difference that makes from just plain vanilla iTunes?
I won't. I'm probably not the best guy to discuss the differences between Pure Music and Amara. For people who aren't familiar with the two applications, they kind of originated because iTunes on a Mac, say you play 16-bit 44.1 regular CD quality, and it'll output bit perfect. But if you want to play 2496, you download from HD Tracks, you have to close iTunes, change the sample rate manually, then reopen iTunes to play that file bit perfect. So the two applications kind of came out of that problem. So if you run Pure Music or Amara, they will do the sample rate switching for you behind the scenes, and it will still output bit perfect. So the difference between the two apps is, like I say, I'm probably not the best guy to talk about those. If you read the internet forums, you'll find everyone on the continuum. This app is terrible. This app's the greatest. There's a bunch of different options, memory playback, and you name it. So
most of your stuff is in just regular CD, Apple lossless rip. Is it?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Does it matter if all my rips are 1644.1? Does it affect the sound quality? So
Absolutely it does.
see, yeah, there'll be
No question about
it's about half and half. Half the people say absolutely yes. Half the people say absolutely not. It would be so much easier if I could just say guaranteed, you know. But I did a computer audio symposium at Fantasy Studios last summer. We demoed it for 100 people, and we had a Amara, and it's got the on-off button, and we turned it off, turned it on, and A/B'd it for people, and almost everyone said it did change the sound. So whether it's groupthink or nobody wanted to say, well, I didn't hear it. Yeah, I don't know. So the cool thing is both applications allow a free demo. So download it. You like it, cool. If you don't, no loss. So yeah.
Is there an easy way of you knowing if you're getting bit perfect out?
The question is, how do I know, or is there an easy way to know if I'm getting bit perfect output? There's not an easy way. The way that I use is, it's not foolproof, but it's very, very good. I use the Berkeley Audio Design Alpha DAC, which supports HD CD. So if I play an HD CD ripped file, it will illuminate the HD CD light if I'm outputting bit perfect. If I'm not, if I resample, I change the sample rate, that light will not come on. And I'm told it's because the HD CD flag is on the last bit. So if any bits before that are changed, it will not work. So, I mean,
how about a cheaper option?
Yeah. I wish there was something that's very easy. There's a couple new interfaces out that say they have a bit perfect test as well. I think Audiophilia says they have it. I haven't used the product yet. I think it's like a USB to SPDIF converter, so I don't know. The Vice DAC 202 has bit transparency test, but that's even more expensive. And I've talked to some engineers at some manufacturers who have made their own bit perfect test. So they send a stream that they know what it should come out like. But yeah, I guess what you can do is set up, use an ASIO driver, use WSAP, use kernel streaming, and hope for the best. Follow up, or did that answer?
No,
Okay.
sorry, no.
Okay. Who's next? Yes.
Since Friday, I've learned a bunch of things that I'm doing wrong or that I should consider. Is there a quick hit list of things that we should not do or things that we should? Examples being, as I learned about galvanic isolation, which I didn't know before. You mentioned toss link several times. Another guy in the previous seminar said that we should be running as much memory as possible to reduce the hard drive spin. Is there a quick hit list of what we should be doing hardware-wise?
No. The question is, is there a quick hit list of, do this, this, and this, and you're off to a good start type of thing? Like, do I need a DAC with galvanic isolation, or do I need 8 gig of memory, or a solid-state hard drive, or this and that? There's no real conclusive answers in terms of the hard drive side, and even outputs. A lot of people are like, what's better, USB or FireWire? Depends, I mean, some USB DACs, awesome, better than some FireWire DACs, and vice versa. It all comes down to implementation. So, in terms of using more memory to take, like activity off of the hard drive and this and that there's a lot more research by a lot smarter people than I that needs to be done. I use solid state drives and what I'll call enough memory. I mean, my MacBook Pro here has got 4 gig. Some people will say put in 8 and you can hear the difference. I can't. If they can, fine. Doesn't matter. If you can afford 8 gig, put it in. Whatever. So, I wish there was a quick hit list. He did mention galvanic isolation, which most of that discussion is beyond my knowledge. But one way to accomplish that is using TossLink. There's a lot of sacrifices using TossLink, but it will definitely separate, galvanically isolate and separate the DAC from the computer, which is a good thing.
What are the sacrifices? What are your opinion of sacrifices with TossLink?
Normally, it's a very high jitter. That's kind of like the common one. So, yeah, it is definitely bandwidth limited. So that's definitely a engineering discussion that you'll get more out of with somebody else. Yeah.
In the new version of Media Center 15, there's 2 Wasabi options, just plain Wasabi and then Wasabi event something.
It's like event mode, or I called it party mode the other day.
Do you have any idea what those are?
What's that?
Do you have any idea what the difference is?
Oh, if I could pull up my email. Matt from J River sent me an email explaining exactly what the differences were, and I don't remember. I believe they did additional tweaking on it and made it better.
Okay.
Don't know. Yeah.
If you're using iTunes or Amara or any of those and getting bit perfect output, say through a coax connection or what have you, going to the same DAC, what would theoretically the difference in sound be attributed to then at that point?
Another one of those where you'll get a million different answers. I mean, yeah.
I mean, no guess. Nobody has any guesses.
A lot of people have guesses, but I don't know that they're helpful. I really don't. They usually end up leading you down the wrong path, and you should stop around a couple of the rooms and ask people. And I mean, talk to Gordon Rankin from Wavelength, and he'll probably give you some ideas as to what he thinks, and also probably say, "I really don't know." So, yes.
Is there a cache list update coming soon?
Oh, depends. Depends on what I get in and use. If it's a product that I really really like and think it's great, then I'll put it on the cache list. The other stuff out there is fairly recent. Are you looking for something specific?
New DAC.
Oh, there's about 10,000 of them out there. Yeah, that's a tough one. I do have the RCAM RDAC in right now on review, so I just started listening to it though, so don't know if it's going to make it or not. Yes?
I'm sort of getting ready to start the process, and you mentioned something earlier about a software for ripping your CDs that you preferred.
Okay, yeah. CD ripping. Question is, what software do I prefer? I'm not saying it's the best, but it's the one I prefer. I like DB Power Amp. It gives me great options while I'm ripping, and I like the user interface.
For Windows or?
For Windows. And I do all my CD ripping on Windows because I can use that application. The other application, which I also recommend but don't use, is Exact Audio Copy. That's kind of been like an industry standard for a while. It's very good. I don't like the interface to it, but a lot of people do. So, great. If it works for you, that's great. I like DB Power Amp for a couple reasons. My CDs don't happen to be in pristine condition. If you're like me in college, you use them as coasters a couple times. Yeah, exactly. So when ripping CDs with DB Power Amp, I set it up to output a text file in the folder of my albums that will tell me what's wrong if there was a problem with the rip. This is one part of why I like it. So it'll tell me what's wrong if there was a problem. Like 30 seconds into track 4, we could not rip, 1 bit or something. So I don't go in and look after every rip. It's like I could probably never get to that song, but it's kind of handy when you're listening and you hear a pop or a tick something, and typical audiophile neurosis, like, oh my gosh, is that my system? And you play it over and you get the same tick, so at least you can narrow it down. And then you just go look at the text file. Oh yeah, there was a problem right there. Cool. But during the rip, it will go to like an accurate rip database and check your rip with online results from a bunch of other people who have ripped it, and it will give you a score. To me, it's really, really good. And also what I do is I rip to more than one format at the same time, and that's an anomaly. Most people would never do that. I do it because I want to use every different format out there, and I kind of have to know them. So it allows me to rip AIFF locally and rip FLAC to my NAS at the same time, and it's really, really versatile. And one way I do it is I'll send a FLAC backup copy to my NAS drive and rip an AIFF copy locally. So do it all in one shot. It works very well.
Does that capture metadata or album art?
Yes, it will capture, well, I mean, depending on what you're using. If you're ripping to FLAC or AIFF, yeah, it'll embed all the metadata and the album art into the file. So if you're not familiar with how some of that metadata works, the data about the data, like album artist, song title, all that kind of stuff, cover art. There's two ways of doing it. The way iTunes does it is it'll go out and find the album art for you, but Apple stores it in their own little file folder structure, and it's not attached to the file unless you do it manually. So if you lose your iTunes library, or you take a song and you want to put it on your wife's computer, that album art won't be there. You have to re-download it. The thing with DB PowerAmp is it embeds all of the stuff into the file. So once you rip it, the album art, all the metadata is in that file for good. So you can move it wherever you want, and you always have it. And also, some playback applications will look in the album folder for a file called like folder.jpg, and they read that as the album art. So DB PowerAmp will also put that for you there. So there's a lot of options. And one thing about ripping with iTunes, if your CDs are in good quality, you'll probably be fine. The DB PowerAmp and iTunes will rip the same track perfectly, or as close to perfect as it can be done. But the thing with iTunes is it's not going to tell you. You don't know. It could have interpolated. It could have done a bunch of things, but you don't know, and there's no feedback. That's why I don't like to rip in iTunes. But for a lot of people, that's the easy way to go, and it worked great. So I highly recommend it if you don't want to get more technical. You just want to use it. iTunes, that's totally fine. Yeah. Right behind you. No, the same person.
Yes. So if you get an accumulation in FLAC, I have it on, say, a NAS drive. Is there a way I can build a file that I can export to my portable device, be that iPod or an MP3 player?
It all depends on what portable device you're using. An iPod, you'll probably have to use something like Rockbox to get FLAC on there. But it doesn't matter where the data's stored, if it's on a NAS or locally. It all depends on your portable device and the playback application you're using. So, because your computer will look at your NAS drive as like a D drive or an E drive. Right. So that really doesn't matter. Yeah.
Speaking of metadata, I found, because my preference for most things is classical music, that the tagging and metadata are just not at all oriented to classical music. Do you see any progress in that front, or is it a hopeless case?
Question is classical music and tagging. Yeah, you're right. It's not good. I know Sulus is working very, very hard on improving that for their product.
And for the rest of us?
Yeah. I don't know when it will get better. I don't. It's a struggle for classical users, big time. Yeah.
Back to your ripping. Do you find it's necessary to have some type of particularly tray-driven outboard drive to burn or to rip from, or do you find sticking it in there?
That's a good question. It's about CD ripping drives. They're all different. They all perform different. And I've read a few articles where people have done tests on them, but to the best of my knowledge, and the quality of the drive and the details about the drive is beyond my knowledge, but if I rip the same file and it gives me an MD5 signature, and it's the exact same from two different drives, to me that's the same data. So if I use this drive or a different drive, and I get the same thing, to me that's fine. But other people will tell you differently. So let's go towards the back. Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for iPhone apps that can control J-River, kind of the way the remote does? For
Yeah,
things?
plug player.
Plug player?
Yeah, yep.
Is that free or?
Yeah, it's probably $5 or something like that. Works on the iPhone, and there's an iPad version as well, so you can go full screen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I use it quite a bit. It's really cool.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, way in the back.
Is there a good sound card for I2S output?
Not that I know of. And I don't know that you would want to do that, but so that question does come up every once in a while on the forum. Can I just output I2S for my computer into the DAC? But I don't know of a card that will do it. Yeah.
What about the ripping in J-River? Is that good?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's one of those, if you're using it and like it, great. I just like the dedicated app, DB Power App, to do my ripping. I mean, the DB Power App is probably like $39 or something, and in this hobby, I mean, that's free. So, yeah.
And if you have a Mac and want to use it, what are you running on, VMware Fusion or something like that?
Oh yeah, good question. I'm running on this Mac. I'm running Boot Camp, so I can boot up to Windows. But I'm also running Parallels, so I can open up Windows while my Mac is running. And I will rip in using Parallels, but playing back music through a virtual machine is a nightmare. Absolutely a nightmare. So, yes.
You know much about AirPlay?
AirPlay. What about it? It's kind of the typical. I mean, it's like AirTunes.
Okay.
Except you're going to be able to take your iPhone and send music right from it to a device.
And it streams lossless, though, right? You can stream lossless files.
Well, it depends on what you're streaming to.
Okay.
The new Apple TV right now is converting everything to 48K on the output.
Mm-hmm.
So you may output 44.1 lossless to it,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not going to get that on the output.
Okay.
So that's kind of a bummer. I'm hoping the software update's going to fix that. So, yeah.
What do you hear on copy protection? Because, I know we don't always pay for our music, but we've got to pay the artists, otherwise we're not going to get any music in the future. So.
Copy protection's done, unless you're talking Blu-ray, in my opinion. Who's next? Yeah.
I enjoyed your review on the esoteric DAC, but...
Uh-oh.
Oh, I did. You call it like you see it, which I think is great.
Thanks.
But for those of us who are on a more strict budget, have you considered doing like a comparison of 10 $500 DACs?
No. It has nothing to do with price. I won't even consider doing $10,000, $100,000 DACs. It sounds like a very great idea. Like, okay, get 10 in here and just A, B, C, D, what's the best and this and that. It's really not going to give anyone solid information that they could use. It's like, in my system, in my room, on Saturday, this DAC sounded the way it did. And that same DAC may sound different in your system. It will sound different. I mean, it's kind of the same thing about every review, but doing a DAC shootout really gives misleading results, in my opinion. And it has nothing to do with offending a manufacturer, saying this one's better than that one. If it is, it is. But it's kind of it'd be a disservice, really, in my opinion.
Will you consider doing reviews of more affordable DACs?
Yeah, I got the Arcam RDAC in right now, and I think it's like $400. And it's got asynchronous USB. So, yeah, definitely. More affordable DACs. It doesn't really matter. I'm not looking to review like super expensive stuff only and stuff like that. So, yeah. Yes.
Asynchronous USB.
Yes.
Did we talk about that, or what's the advantage?
Okay.
Yeah. Because that's one of the DACs that I was actually looking at.
Yeah, the question is about asynchronous USB. Right now, asynchronous USB is kind of the hot topic. And in simple terms, asynchronous is one way of doing USB transfer, and adaptive is another way. That's like the common ways of doing things. And a very, very layman's explanation of it is in asynchronous transfer mode, the DAC controls the computer. In adaptive, the computer controls the DAC. That's one of those things like, don't repeat that on an exam, but that's kind of a layman's way of doing it. And asynchronous and adaptive, I mean, there's no, you can't say, oh, adaptive is always going to be worse than asynchronous. It just doesn't work that way, because there's some asynchronous implementations that aren't very good, and you'll find an adaptive DAC much better. So asynchronous has very, very good potential because it controls the data flow between the DAC and the computer. And if you go adaptive, the computer, and there's also a clocking issue too. Adaptive doesn't have flow control, and if you're doing adaptive, it's getting the clock rate from the computer, and it has to adjust with a synthesizer to that constantly. It's like once every 2 milliseconds or whatever. It's an engineering thing beyond my knowledge base. I'm just going off what I've learned. So, I mean, asynchronous, I think, is a technically better concept, but the results are going to vary with every single DAC you use.
Because that would allow some of them to be able to translate. This guy was running into a problem where he couldn't get that 192.
No, yeah, good question. Is asynchronous involve the sample rate 24-bit 192? No, not a bit. Adaptive and asynchronous doesn't. They both support sample rates up to 192. And then one thing to keep in mind with those is the use of device drivers and extra software to install. The adaptive USB devices, I don't know if, well, most of them don't require drivers if you're 2496 and below, which is nice in my opinion. Asynchronous, same way. Once you get up to 24192, if you're on the Windows side, you're going to need device drivers no matter what. Because right now Windows isn't supporting Class 2 audio. On the Mac side, you can use, say, Gordon Rankin's asynchronous USB DACs up to 24192 without any extra driver installation or anything. To me, it comes in very handy if you don't have to use a driver. Because to a certain extent, audio companies do audio very well. They're not software companies, and a lot of them rely on third parties to help them with the driver. So if there's a problem, it may take, say, 2 days to figure it out. I'm not saying it's just a humongous problem. I'm saying if you're looking at minute little differences, just keep in mind with drivers there are issues. So just something to keep in mind. Definitely don't shy away from a DAC just because it has device drivers to install.
Should we at least aim for one that goes up to 192?
No.
No.
Question is, should we aim for one that goes up to 192? There'll be DACs that perform at 44.1 much better than 192. Don't be fooled by the numbers game. Don't look for something that just goes to 192 or 32-bit or that will lead you down the wrong path. Who's next? Yes.
I just have a tagging question. When I did my rips, and this was something like 300 albums, I didn't know any better. I used Windows Media Player with Windows 7 was there, and it worked. I've been trying to play around with some other software, like XBMC, for example, just for an end. And after this rip was done, it found all my files and all, but library mode did not turn on. And I ripped them as WAV files. I suspect it might be a tagging issue because they stressed in XBMC every file must be tagged.
Okay, yeah, that's your problem. WAV.
So I think there might be a lot of work ahead. What's the best? What's the best? Should I?
Yeah. Okay.
And I want minimum lossless. Do I need to re-rip to flat, or is there a way to get it?
I'm glad I'm not in your situation. So he has his files all ripped in the WAV file format. So WAV, it does support metadata, but it's very, very. Most applications don't support metadata with WAV. So, I mean, for 99% of people, WAV is not going to support any metadata. So, he's got all his files ripped, and the application will probably just see it as like track 1, track 2, track 3, if it can see it. So, if you do a conversion of them to, say, FLAC, it's got nothing to go on, so you're going to have FLAC, track 1, track 2, track 3. I would re-rip. Otherwise, if you want to manually put them in, and that's quicker?
No.
Okay. Buy an MF Digital automatic ripper and set it to rip 40 CDs an hour.
So is the better, so that I do it right this time, is it better to say you use DB power amp and then rip to FLAC?
In my opinion, that would be a very good way to go, to use DB power amp and rip to FLAC. FLAC supports metadata very, very well.
And then
If you want to playback FLAC, totally cool, works great. A lot of people do it. If you want to convert that to AIFF, that also will support your metadata. Not all programs can read the metadata very well from that. JRiver works very well. So just, I wouldn't go from FLAC to Wave, or, because you're going to lose a lot.
now when it comes to the tagging data, as the rip is being done, that data is inserted on a
Okay.
basis.
Yeah.
So how does that-
The question is, as he's ripping, is what happens to the data? Is it inserted, or what's going on? So you put your CD in, DB Power Amp will go out to the database and find it and say, here's the CD, here's all the track names, here's the album art, and then when you rip it, it'll attach everything, it'll embed it into the file. So the FLAC file will contain everything. So you can move it to whatever application you want, and it's all there. So that's a really, really big advantage.
Not wishing to be controversial, but did you hear John Atkinson's panel this morning?
I missed it this morning. What was
Every
that?
single one of the guys said they were asked about format. They all said AIFF.
To rip to?
Yeah.
Sure.
It's their choice, I guess.
Yeah, it's their choice. And I guess if you're not familiar, FLAC is a compressed lossless format. AIFF is uncompressed lossless. So, there is a big debate over whether playback of FLAC could sound different than playback of AIFF. And it's another one of those, 5 people, 10 different answers. I always just say, put it in your system if you hear a difference. Okay, go with whatever you want. The theories for why it could sound different are really, really splitting hairs. I guess the way I look at it is, okay, I'll rip to FLAC. When I play back, I usually play back from AIFF. It's like, disk space is so cheap. Okay, if there's a doubt, I'll just erase the doubt and not have to think about it again. I'll use uncompressed AIFF. So be it. If I find out in 10 years they're exactly the same, okay. If I find out in 10 years that there is a difference and here's why, okay, I'm good. So that's kind of my thought on it. Yeah, in the back.
There was also a statement right after they talked about that somebody converted AIFF to FLAC and then back to AIFF, and it was the same file.
Yeah. So the difference is, that's different though. That you're not actually playing back the file then. So yeah, you can convert back and forth all day, and the MD5, which is the signature of the file, will be identical. The people that are claiming there could be a difference say it's during playback how the application uncompresses a FLAC file. That's kind of where the could it sound different thing is at right now. It's nothing to do with kind of like offline conversion back and forth.
So the AIFF would, it's not lost, and storage is certainly not a problem. About the root, that's not the issue. So that would give you that same profile, tagging. It's not compressed.
Yeah, AIFF, the tagging support on FLAC, I think, is the ultimate and is the best. Tagging support on AIFF is pretty good, and you'll probably never notice a difference between the two in terms of tagging. So if you rip to AIFF, chances are you'll be totally fine.
So is the tagging data, the cover art, the name of the songs per track?
Name of the song, track number, artist. You can put in comments yourself, and those will be embedded in there.
So Media Player did provide all that. So where did it?
Okay, what it's doing is he says he's ripped in Wave, and Media Player seems to know the album art and the artist's name and all that. What it's doing is just doing an association. So it says in its own little database, oh, I know what this is. I know the album artist's name, and I know what album art goes with that one. It's just an association. So outside of Windows Media Player, you don't have any of that. Yeah, so it's associated versus embedded.
Gotcha.
Yes?
Your comment about not worrying about the numbers when you're picking a DAC,
Yep.
If you want to do high-res files, don't you need
Well,
192 or something?
if you want to do 192 files to a DAC that doesn't play 192 very well, I mean, it's all going for, I mean, version, just like in anything, version 2.0 isn't always better than version 1.0. Sometimes implementing a 192 DAC could be very, very difficult for a manufacturer. They'll do it because they got the number. It's in marketing. So it's all, I mean, there's no constant rule that says get one that's 192. It seems to be, you know, if you want support for future high resolution, high sample rates, okay, it'll support it. But will it play back well? Will it sound decent? That's a whole nother thing. I mean, most cars will go to 80 miles an hour, but they don't all go 80 the same. So, I mean, it's just kind of, don't fall into the numbers game. And I think every manufacturer will tell you that. Don't just look at the numbers. It's the same with measurements, really. Just don't look at those and make a sole decision on that. Yes?
One of our internet viewers wants to ask, what is the difference, like, what are the major pros and cons between internal and external sound cards?
Oh, sure. Internal, external sound cards. Internal cards, it's a very, very noisy environment. But the term sound card is kind of, it's kind of old school in a way. I mean, you're talking computers, old school. Sound card kind of comes from the original, when you needed a sound card, it was an actual card, you put it in the computer into a slot, so sound card. And now if you plug in like a USB DAC, that technically is your sound card. It's kind of like what's the difference between internal or external digital output device, really, or your digital I/O? So it depends. Like I use a Lynx AES16 card to output, and that'll give me AES EBU output and be able to clock. I can send word clock back to it, or I can send word clock from it. That gives me a whole bunch of options. But, I mean, it's really find what you want. If you want a big desktop computer, you can find a USB DAC that will work great. You can find an internal card that will work great at all. It's really tough. Is there a follow up from them, or did I?
There isn't really.
Okay, maybe if you can keep watching, and I can do a follow up on that. I'm not sure I answered the question. So, yeah.
Speaking of the Lynx sound card, the CAPS computer that you built, you mentioned at one point that version 2 was coming. Can you give us an update?
Okay. Yeah, what he's talking about, I built a computer called the Computer Audiophile Pocket Server. It was kind of a project of mine that I did. And then I posted on the site, here's all the components that I used, and here's how much it costs. And if you want to build it, here's where you can buy the components, put it together, or just bring this sheet to your local computer shop and they'll build it for you. So, yeah, I'm working on version 2 right now, and I have a bunch of time after the show to dedicate to it. So it should be coming fairly soon. And I've got some help on it too from a couple computer hardware manufacturers who are kind of answering some questions for me and saying, well, no, use this one, use this chipset or use this processor. And so version 2 in this case will be better than version 1. Yes?
Is there a difference in iTunes in Windows versus iTunes in Mac?
Yeah, huge difference. The question is there a difference in iTunes on Windows versus iTunes on a Mac? iTunes on Windows, you will struggle to get bit perfect output. Not saying it can't be done, but you will struggle. iTunes on a Mac, out of the box, it's bit perfect. Have the volume control at 100, and you're good. So, yeah, iTunes, I would not use iTunes on Windows. It's the same as Windows Media Player. You can't specify your output device unless you want to get very, very geeky to use it. And to me, it's not worth it.
DB Power Amp work on the Mac?
No, DB Power doesn't work on Mac, unfortunately. That's why I'm ripping on Windows. I know it's kind of a convoluted solution, but if your CDs are in pretty good shape, iTunes is going to rip for you pretty dang good. Yes?
First of all, first question was great. Second,
good.
Have you ever used FooBar, and what do you think of FooBar versus JRiver?
Sure. Question: have I ever used FooBar, and what do I think versus JRiver? To me, computer audio, it's about a lot of things, but it's about a full experience of aesthetically pleasing album art and easy navigation and everything. And to me, FooBar looks like a spreadsheet, and I don't want that. But there are a lot of people using FooBar. It works awesome for them. So I mean, it's just like, who's better, Van Gogh or Picasso? What painting looks better? They'll both do the same thing pretty much. So I just like the way JRiver works, and I like its features, and some of the zoning support, UPnP. I really like how it's done in JRiver. Yes?
I'm going to switch subjects a little bit, because one thing I do like as well is streaming internet radio.
Okay.
And so, Shoutcast on Winamp works great. There's a Baroque station in Holland that runs 256 kilobits a second, which is about as good as it gets.
Playing Scottish nose whistle?
No, playing excellent.
Good stuff? Okay. Excellent.
No
Excellent.
commercials, no yak.
Very cool.
It's called Avro.
AVRO.
And they actually have about 3 genres of classical and 1 jazz, all at 256. One of
Cool.
them 320. It is very cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to, nothing personal.
No, well,
just because
there's enough audiophile labels with Blippo the Seal and his bicycle horns.
That's yeah.
So I mean, this is not the place to.
That's what I was getting at. So
Yeah.
much of the
I know.
good stuff, Here's
No.
sticks breaking at 192.
Yeah, but I mean, do you do much of that? Do you have some preferences or some insights you'd like to share?
Yeah. So questions about streaming radio from the internet. I like to use iTunes for it, because I don't do it very often. iTunes, I just like how it's set up. I can just go in there. What do I want today? Okay, done. Probably somebody who does it a lot more than I would have, a better opinion or be able to go into details. I like this one much better than that one. I know Sonos does it pretty well. That's a fun system to use with that. Yeah, Squeezebox also does it.
And then you can sort by bit rate. In other words, I don't want to pick through the 99% of the stations that are, under 128 kilobits a second. Just don't waste my time. So you can just look at the crank. Can these other ones do any of that stuff? I'm just ignorant on the other ones.
Probably, but I can't tell you off the top of my head.
iTunes at one time, one of my versions of iTunes shows the bit rate, and then another.
I think it'll show it.
It'll show it, but then you've got to sort through. Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, let's just look.
This is getting streamed, so
I can't see anywhere in here right now. Oh wait, yeah, you can sort by bitrate. I'm doing it right here.
On iTunes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You just got to view the column.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So right click on the top, hit bitrate, sort by it. Here's Van Halen FM 320K. Sweet. Cool. But yeah, the streaming internet radio it's awesome. I mean, I love Pandora. I use it on my iPod.
Except the bitrate.
Yeah, when I'm streaming, it's all out the window. It's more for content, It's like
right. Pandora is awesome.
Yeah, I'll take a great tune on an AM radio over stick breaking at 192. Like we all will, So it's just me. If you're into that, great. Okay, who's next? Yeah.
Is there any software that will play back from the memory of your computer, rather than?
Yeah.
Is it useful?
Yeah. Like right now, I have Amara installed. So I run Amara with iTunes, and I just hit the memory button. So it just loads everything into memory and plays it back.
Any Windows one?
Oh, yeah. JRiver can do it. There's a checkbox in JRiver that says playback from memory. So it'll load the file into memory first before playing it. Once in a while, there's a pause at the start, just because it's got to load it.
Is that in the audio adjustment section?
I believe it is, but let me give you the exact answer. Audio section, yeah, play files from memory instead of disk. not zone specific. Yeah. So I mean, and that's it's kind of cool. It's free. Try it. If you don't like it, done. Which is very rare in this hobby. It's free. So next. Yes.
You're using the FireWire with the device 202?
I have used it. Yes.
Or are you using USB with that?
The Vice DAC 202. I don't have it. I reviewed it. I had it for a while. I preferred it via FireWire. It doesn't have a USB input, so it's FireWire and just about everything else. AES EBU, SPDIF. I want to say it's got Toslink too. I preferred it via FireWire, and that was just my preference with it. Does that get into your question, or? Okay.
And why did you like that particular DAC over any of the others?
I love the way it sounded, and the options that it features are terrific. It's got a coarse analog and fine digital volume control. So it allowed me to pair it up going directly into my amp very, very well. And it's got the bit transparency test. So Daniel Weiss provides files, and you play them back, and it will tell you if it's bit transparent or not on the DAC. So it's like once you get it set up, do the test. If it's good, and you're done. So there's a whole review on it, and I explain kind of why I like it and everything. So if you haven't read it, I suggest reading it, and then just go on the forums if you got questions, or email me, and be good. Yes.
Have you looked at the ARC DAC 8 yet?
The Audio Research DAC 8. Yes, I had it for a weekend. It's really good. I liked it. It was one of those things like if you really like audio research, this amp will be totally over the top for you.
But that's one of these drivers, though, right?
Yeah, it does require drivers, and there was some issues with the first release of drivers, which is why I kind of say it's not a showstopper, but it's just something to think about. So,
what was this equipment called?
The Audio Research DAC 8. It supports up to 192 via USB, and the other inputs as well. Yes.
So what we're talking about DACs, if you had a chance to look at the DAC, the Cambridge Audio DAC Magic.
The DAC Magic? Yeah, I reviewed it. Yeah, it's out on my site.
Okay.
Just do a search and yeah. Who's next? You got the questions, so do half the other people. Yes.
So, I'm sure you've evaluated a lot of front ends or player front end combinations. I mean, which ones do you like the best and why? Is it J River just plain fine?
Yeah, on Windows, I just like J River the best. Yeah, and that's again, just me. Some people, I mean, some of my colleagues and friends do prefer something like Fubar because it's no frills. They just want to see the track title. Boom, they're done. Get rid of everything. So, whatever you like, but I like J River.
Fubar's free and J River's $50.
Yeah, Fubar is free. J River's about $50. Mm-hmm.
Again, in this hobby, so what?
Yeah.
On a Mac, what's your preference?
On a Mac?
iTunes and Amaro, was it?
Yeah, on the Mac, I use iTunes with Amaro. Yeah. And iTunes is pretty much the only game in town for that. I mean, you can do Songbird.
So the Amaro is just to get the sample rate switching.
Sample rate switching and sound quality if it affects you. Amaro also has a ton of other options. They're working on DSD playback and conversion now, which is kind of cool. And Blue Coast Records released DSD, so it's another option in terms of that. I mean, it does a ton more things that I can't even think of right now.
Just
but
works in sync with iTunes then?
yeah, I mean, what's cool about Amaro too is you launch it and you can just minimize it and never look at it, play through iTunes, and you're still running through Amaro. So, I mean, when I first started using it, that's what I did. I'm like, I don't want to see the window, just go away. But now it supports like playlist mode, so you can also play FLAC with it, which you can't do through iTunes. So I'll just grab a folder, drag it over into Amaro, and I got a FLAC playback list right on my Mac. So not even going through the iTunes interface. It's like it gives you options, I guess. If you get sick of looking at iTunes, you can do it that way. So it's cool. Yes?
When you were using your Asus Sonar card, did you ever use the DAC within it and output analog to your
I haven't done it yet.
preamp?
Still haven't, but I haven't done it yet. I just prefer the external DACs that I have so much. It's possible that one's very good. I guess I'll have to try it now. Thanks.
What DAC do you use?
I use a couple of them, but my main DAC that I've had for a while now, and I continue to use, is the Berkeley Audio Design Alpha DAC. Yes?
Is there any advantage if you're using a laptop to switch, like get a PCMCIA card with a coax or some other output format from USB? Or is it just not working?
I've yet to see a good PCMCIA output device. I mean, I'm sure they're there, but I've really yet to see one. So, and
PCMCIA is obsolete.
yeah, I mean, Express Card or PCMCIA, you know, the slots. So, I've yet to see one. And kind of another option, which rarely gets mentioned now too, is Linux-based machines. And there'll probably be a couple of Linux fans in here doing the yes, yeah, yes, see? Because they've used it and realized it's a good solution. So there's two sides to Linux. If you want to do it yourself, you better know what you're doing. But if you don't want to do it yourself, there's companies that have done it for you, and it will work like a toaster. And what I mean by that, and I've been using this terminology for a while, and a couple people, what the hell do you mean? So to me, a toaster, I put in bread and hit the button, and it makes toast. If I want a toaster for my music server, I just want to hit the button and it plays music. And I don't want to have to worry about bit perfect output or anything like that. And a Linux machine is capable of doing that for you. So it's a very viable option. It barely runs anything in the background. You can customize it to virtually do nothing but playback audio. So it's a very good solution.
I'll warn you, this is more of an opinion question. Do you think 24-bit 96 kilohertz, just in terms of availability, is ever going to become ubiquitous? The reason I ask is I continue to buy CDs to the same, but the reason and then rip them, but the reason I do that is I know whatever esoteric artist I hear or want, I can find it on a CD. And I just know my personal nature. I don't want to only have access to 24, 96-bit, get accustomed to that sound, really like it, and then I can't find it for the artist I do like. So
yeah, it's like reading tea leaves. It really is. If 2496 would be a standard, I doubt very much that it would be some standard. So, you know, but I interviewed a recording engineer this morning, and he's working on a project for 24192 of like actual good music. Not that there's not actual good music out there. There's very little of music I like. But he's doing pop and, you know, rock and good jazz. So he's very focused on good artists and good music at very, very high quality.
Is that what last night, the Bravura label?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
sure.
Yep.
You might want to mention these guys, because that was good.
Yeah. So Bill Schnee has a project, or started a new label called Bravura, and he's working to, he's capturing stuff at 24192, very good artists, very good sound, and if you're not familiar with Bill Schnee, he has won Grammys for Steely Dan, Asia, Gaucho, and he's worked. He's a very, very.
Sheffield director.
He did the Sheffield lab. So he's such a humble guy. He's like, let's see, I worked with all the Beatles before I was 26. I was on Jackson 5's bus, but that's another story. I mean, this is like the guy. He's so cool, but he's very passionate, and I'm really excited about what he's doing. So I hope it takes off. Yeah, you heard it last night, and it's absolutely stunning. It's great. Yeah. Yes.
I heard the opinion that if you're like using a certain output like USB for your DAC, then you should use a different output for like an external hard drive.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't share the same like two USBs for the.
In general, yes, I wouldn't do it. The question is, you know, if you're using a USB DAC, what if I use a USB hard drive as well, or, you know, something similar to that, or vice versa? I would split it up. If I have a USB DAC, I would use a FireWire or eSATA or a different type of external storage device. Firewire DACs or use a USB drive. The thing with USB is computers are built very, very cheaply, and you're sharing the same internal bus, bandwidth, and CPU with all the devices connected to USB. So it's just one way of saying, okay, I don't want to worry about it. You know, there may be no problems, there may be some, but let's just eliminate it.
How about mice and keyboard that are attached to USB? Is that anything?
You know, it actually can be. Usually not, but one interesting thing is with the generation of MacBook Pros before this unibody, there was one USB port, I believe, that worked well. The other ones did not, because the keyboard on MacBook Pros lights up, and if you don't touch it for a while, then the lights go dim. And when the lights would go dim, you would get dropouts in the music if you were on certain USB ports. So, and I had a USB to SPDIF converter, and it kept going out, and I sent the manufacturer an email saying, it's not working, this device doesn't work, I'm sending it back. They're like, oh, let us do some homework, what are you using? So they found it out for me. They're like, well, your keyboard's causing the problem. So, I mean, it's very, very slim that you're going to have the chance, but it can happen.
Is there typically just one USB bus in a machine, or sometimes do they have two?
Sure, there probably can be 2 or 3 or 4 or 1. I mean, everything's done so cheap now that, and it's not just USB. It's not just what you would consider USB devices on the USB bus. Like if I look at my Mac right now, I go to About This Mac, and then say More Info, and click on USB. And what I see on USB is the infrared receiver, the Apple internal keyboard and trackpad, Bluetooth USB, host controller, iSight camera, internal memory card reader. So that's kind of what you're dealing with, and it's not just something external USB.
So on a Windows machine, would you maybe be safe in getting a second USB card and putting it in?
You know, a few people I know have done that. I just haven't done it yet. I don't want to say you'd be safe, but I definitely try, because put a USB card in is real cheap. It's like $10. So, but yes.
You're talking about asynchronous transfer mode, and so that's a USB connection protocol.
Well,
what I'm getting at is if you don't use USB on your DAC, if you're now digital coax from a sound card, you don't have to worry about that capability in the DAC. It'll be the USB.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. If you're going out coax or AES, asynchronous, in terms of asynchronous USB protocol, doesn't matter.
Does that mean the clock DAC links digital coax?
The clocking issue there is, I would say, more of an issue. If you can use, I like AES output with a links card, because then I can send word clock from my DAC back to it. It's going to a manual shifter though, so you have to manually set the clock rate. Most of the clocking discussions and stuff are like over my head, so a better answer for you would probably be from someone else. Yes?
If you're setting up a system using Amara on the Mac, would you use Amara's capability to do the volume control for the system?
You know, that you can, and it works very, very well. I just don't. I want to get the stuff out of my computer absolute bit perfect. But it does work very well. It's probably, I want to say it's a 64-bit volume control, 32 or 64. So, I mean, when you're attenuating, you're still probably not losing much, if any. So, I just like to get it out bit perfect and deal with it on my hardware side. But yeah, you can do it. A lot of people do it.
But you don't think the sound quality would be as good as doing it in an external preamp?
In my opinion, I don't think so.
Okay.
But other people say, oh yeah, it's just as good. So, you know, good relative term. And it's free to try too, you know, just throw it down. Do you hear the difference? Yes, no? Decision made. So, next. Nothing? Anything from online?
No.
They're all sleeping.
They are saying that the live webcast is great, and I love you.
Uh-oh, wonderful. Go click on my banners. Joke. Yes.
If you're contemplating getting a Macintosh for music only and nothing else, is there any advantage to any particular model over another?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't spend more than, say, $1,500 or something.
Yeah. Very good question. If you're contemplating on getting a Macintosh, advantages or disadvantages over the different models. I prefer getting the MacBook Pro. MacBook Pro with like 4 gig of memory and a 500 gig hard drive, probably like $1,300, $1,350 or something like that. The thing I like about it is you can run off battery, and your keyboard's right there. So versus the other option is a Mac Mini, which also works spectacular. But most people, if you're going to do it for audio only, won't connect a monitor, won't connect a keyboard and mouse. It's kind of a headless unit. And then I always run into the problem of, oh no, I need a keyboard, so then I got to dig it out and plug it in. But if you're going to leave it plugged in the whole time, then you'd probably be all right. But I just prefer the MacBook Pros because I use external storage anyway. So I have 120 gig SSD in my laptop, so I'm not worried about being able to put a terabyte drive in the Mac Mini or anything like that. But that's just me. Yes?
How do you deal with archiving your music or making sure that whatever your library is safe, backed up?
Yeah, backup is the general question. What I do is I do have a bunch of copies of all my music, but I take everything and copy it to an external drive, and then I don't go off-site with it, but I do have a fireproof safe that I just throw it in. And to me, the big thing is it's gonna save you time, because if you had to re-rip 5,000 CDs, time's your problem. That's the most money, you know. So that's what I do. I just throw it to another hard drive and put the hard drive in something else. Sure, I could lose it all, but I mean, practicality to a certain extent. So that's what I use. There's also mirroring devices. I mean, if I had 2 NAS devices, I could set them up to mirror each other. But one huge issue with that is most of the data that I've lost has been my fault. I've accidentally deleted more stuff than I care to talk about. So if you're synchronizing between 2 devices, you've deleted it on both. So it's kind of nice just to copy it off to something else and put that something else somewhere else. So, I mean, chances are it's greater that it's going to be our fault that the hard drive dying. I mean, they do die, but mean time between failure is not bad now. Yes?
Have you played with Windows Home Server as an alternative to a NAS device?
I haven't, because when it first came out, there was a bunch of data loss issues, and I just got a bad taste in my mouth from that and went, I'm going to steer clear. I've been looking at it lately and thinking about trying it, but I'm sure it works well. At CES, there was a few companies using it. There's probably some here using it, and I think it's fairly easy to use. And if it comes down to either I can use it or I can't, then obviously if Windows Home Server you can use, it's a no-brainer to use it. Yes?
I use that. If you have any questions, like after.
You're happy with it?
Yeah, it works. It's stable.
There we go. Yes?
You mentioned your DAC that you use was a Berkeley something.
Berkeley Audio Design Alpha DAC? Yeah, that's what I use.
Any reason particularly why you chose that, or you're just comfortable with it?
Ton of reasons. I love the sound. It's got the HDCD light indicator, so it will give me pretty good bit perfect test. I mean, that's really critical I think for audio. It's overlooked a ton is the bit perfect output. Because, I mean, if you don't have that, it's like EQing your CD player before it gets, your transport before it gets to the DAC, you know? So, it's got digital volume control, so I can skip a preamp. And I did a review on it, so it's all out there and everything I like about it, and I compare it. So, but that's just what I use, and it's not $20,000, it's $5,000, and it was within my budget. So. Nobody. If you have the questions, so do other people. No questions from Blackfire Research back there. Yes?
Is there any software, I'm kind of novice to all this, that you can put in a CD and tell if it's well recorded or if it's like, you know, the gold CDs that say that master recorder? Or
No. No. There is software to get to a much more technical level and look at, say, the waveform, or if you download high res, you can look at it and say, oh, this has been upsampled from 44.1. But that's a much different animal than what you're kind of talking about.
Here's one.
Uh-oh.
Are you having good success with your downloads, with good metadata and managing them? How do you manage them?
That's a good question. Downloads with metadata and managing them. I've had pretty good luck with downloading and metadata, although it never seems to be how I would do it. Say I just downloaded Jazz at the Pawn Shop from HD Tracks, 24882, and there's always a little quirk because somebody will always make a decision. Do they, hyphenate some name, or is it the first initial period and then the name and stuff like that? And is the album art attached and this and that? But overall, I guess I'm satisfied with it. It could be better. Is that, or did I totally miss what you're?
Well, that's part of it. And the other part is how do you manage the downloads within your library?
Oh, how do I manage the downloads with it? I download Jazz at the Pawn Shop. I usually put a label in there in comments like HD Tracks download, and then I just throw it in with the rest of my stuff, and then copy it over to where my backup is.
You keep track of the high-res stuff separate from your standard definition?
Okay,
Sorry about that.
So what I do for that is I store all my music in a music folder. And say we're talking FLAC here. It's all in the music folder, all sample rates. But then I just create smart playlists that say whatever's imported into the library. Oh, is it 88.2? Boom, I throw it into this playlist. Just automatically does it. So I don't have to think about it. If I want that sample rate, boom, I click on it, and all my stuff shows up. That's just kind of how I do it. And I mean, it was more critical like 2 years ago when a bunch of DACs didn't support high res or anything, so you were listening via sample rate. So, but it is handy though. Yes.
Kind of an unrelated question. I'm curious about your demographics and traffic that's visiting your website. Would you want to share any of that?
Oh, good question.
More demographics than traffic.
The average age is 35 to 45, heavily weighted in that area. Some below and some above. And mainly from the U.S. The most people by far come from the Bay Area, Northern California.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I have a question about, again, tagging and metadata. So, as I see this coming, if I have to re-rip everything, and then some of that data is wrong, and then that data is embedded in the file, how
It's
is that
all-
edited?
Okay.
Let's just say a track name is.
Yeah, here's how I do it. If I rip the CD and I don't like, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, or Tom Petty ampersand the Heartbreakers, I want it all to be the same. So I do it within JRiver. You can edit all the metadata right there. It's nothing set in stone. So it's all there right for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just takes time. Yes.
I have kind of a follow-up on this, on that DV power amp. If you put a CD in, you rip the CD, and it comes up with no metadata, can you just manually add it?
Yes. Yeah, you can manually add anything you want. Mm-hmm. Another thing what's cool about it too is it'll pull down the metadata, and if you don't think it's exactly right, it'll bring up like 2 or 3 options coming from other sources. So a couple times I've said, oh wait, that source is the one I want to use because it's the original master recording from Mobile Fidelity, and boom, and it just throws it over for you. So it's nice. Any questions, sir? Walking in.
No, I just wanted to see if apparently you covered some of the...
I don't want to put you on the spot.
Okay.
But if you have the question, so do some other people. Just so. Just,
Someone just mentioned the fact that they had a seminar earlier today, and that the maker of Lin or whatever said that there's no need for a high-end transport anymore, and that you can do everything directly from hard drive.
let's see, what do they sell? Oh, it's all. I mean, I don't use a high-end. I mean, I consider my computer a high-end transport. I don't use a disk spinner anymore. A lot of people do, and a lot of people love the sound, and they think it's better. Whenever I hear like, okay, yeah, this CD player is better, or this transport is better, compared when they've done comparisons, it's always so like, okay, were you getting bit perfect output? It's just like you want to make sure they were on the same playing field. And if that's the case, that their transport's better, okay, cool. No biggie. But I don't use one anymore. And I think if you look at some of the rooms here getting the best sound, you'll find they're not using transports. So, yes?
When it comes to the database, when you're going through the ripping process and then the metadata is downloaded, I assume different players or different applications use different there are several databases available and different ones you use, like what Windows Media Player would use would be different than what.
Yeah, the question is.
I know that's true because XBMC uses a different one than say Windows Media Player.
Yeah, the question is ripping CDs and where does this metadata come from? Apps use different sources of metadata. I believe iTunes, is it still named Grace Note? Yeah, I think iTunes uses Grace Note. Some of the other ones will query 3 of them.
I like DB Power Amp. Does that?
That queries more.
That probably sounds like the best.
Which is why I've gone to it. I mean, I've used a ton of them, and I just prefer that one.
And then, like you said, if for a given track, for example, or name of an album, if it goes to different databases and there's different text, it'll show you multiples and you can choose.
Yeah, you pull it up and it'll show you right next to each other what they are.
I think I like that.
You're getting your money's worth today. I like it. Excellent. Yes?
Have you found there to be a difference in sound quality using different USB cables when you're...
That's a good question. I have to say yes.
Really?
But with an asterisk. I listened to it. I reviewed a USB cable 2007, I think. And I perceived a difference. Lately, I've struggled. I don't know that I could identify a couple in my current system the way it is. But that's just me and my system. So I did get a new USB cable in from AudioQuest the other day, and it's got the battery back and stuff on it, and I'm interested to use it because I've heard other people that I respect their opinions have said, "Oh yeah, this makes a difference." So I'm very open-minded, and I'm going to put it in my system and see.
Can you report on your website your findings of the audio?
Yeah, I certainly will, but to give you an example, like my current system, I'm going through a Macintosh MC275 two-band. And to some people, this could put more color on any cable I use, and I'm not going to be able to tell the difference. So, a ton of things to keep in mind. Yes?
Is there any advantage to these things that are marketed as music servers that do this function? I mean, they've got a drawer that'll take your CD and rip it and stores it on its internal drive. Is that really worthwhile? To me, they just look kind of pricey for what you can do outboard to put the thing together.
It's all different horses for different courses. If you can do it yourself, fine. If you don't want to do it yourself, then those boxes are awesome. If you want the toaster, plop it in your system, connect the cables, you're done. So it's all what you want, really. But there's definite room in the marketplace for them. They are good. And I mean, some people, if they have the full Bryston stack of equipment and that music server plops right in, awesome. It looks the same. It's a Bryston unit and it works like a toaster. So, I like them. I use them too. You're getting very sleepy. We can wrap up early if nobody's got other questions.
I do.
Okay, good. Here we go.
Same one as the listen up, but I want to see if you give me a different answer.
Uh-oh.
So what about for someone who hasn't entered the computer market yet, but, you know, say for a median sort of output of, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 or something like that, you know, not 10 or 20 grand, but not 1,000. And if they were going to get into computer audiophile, you know, and I know there's several things on your website as far as a PC or a Macintosh. Or, I mean, what would, I know it's very general, but what would you say to that?
Okay. Have you ever walked into McDonald's and said, I want lunch? What do you want? Lunch. There's a ton of options. It depends on what you like. They're both capable. Windows, Mac, Linux, all capable of giving you great sound quality. So if you're used to one over the other, go with that one. Nothing new to learn. So, I mean, a lot of people have been using Windows forever. Use Windows. They'll all be great. So, what did I say? Listen up.
Well, that's a lot of people do, but
there's differences in terms of which one's easier or not. But if you're familiar with Windows, Mac is totally alien. It's usually considered much easier, but if you're not familiar with it, I would say Mac's easier to get bit perfect output. But then again, there is some adjustments to make. If you buy a Linux server put together, there's nothing to do. It's outputting bit perfect. If you buy it, I mean, you get it from, you know, Joe Sixpack's garage. I don't know, but there's some out there that are done perfect. You don't have to think about anything. So it's all what you want to eat for lunch.
Like there's a music hall, I think it's music hall or whatever, but then they use the Mac Pro, you know, with the 4 different drives and all that sort of thing.
Okay.
But that's a little pricey. But I mean, that's almost along the lines of a music server. In fact, they call it a reference, audiophile reference music server, but it's still a Mac Pro.
Okay.
So that, you know, I guess the question would be, you know, one of those formats. You said Mac's a little better as far as getting bit perfect output.
It's easier. It's easier, I would say, and not very confusing. I mean, Windows, if you, like, I've written instructions on my site on how to configure Windows to do it. So if you do that, you're usually good. I mean, it's all what you're used to. If you're a Mac or Windows guy, I would just go with that. If you don't want to touch either one, go with a Linux machine. Or get a UPnP player and just, I mean, there's a ton of options.
But as far as you know, as far as something for the future, maybe that's going to be more compatible or more technologically compatible with.
I mean, Mac's going to be around. Windows is going to be around. They can both connect to, say, a USB DAC. Those are going to be around. They change. I mean, nobody's going to change to, say, LightPeak, a new, you know, connection methodology, if no computers have it. You know what I mean? So, nothing's going to. Neither one's going to be more future-proof or anything like that. You know, it's all what you like. Is that the same answer as?
Kind of, but that's all right. That's all right. At least you're you know, at least you're consistent.
Okay, good. Yes.
Of course, I really only heard about Amara for the first time during this show, and as luck would have it, I dropped over the room just before coming here with this. And they did that demo where they said that the output from, they were using a Mac Mini, and they said the output from that was not bit perfect, and they were making their claim to fame. That's a big part of the reason why their solution on the Mac Mini sounds better than they did with, you said they did when they had a button they could turn on to go from the output from, while the same source was playing,
Sure.
from just iTunes directly between the Amara, and I have to tell you that in my opinion, the Amara did sound better.
Okay.
But was that primarily just because the Mac Mini, the Mac Mini and iTunes by default was not bit perfect? Is that the difference? Is that the main claim to fame? Is the difference in sound quality, the idea of bit perfect output?
No.
That could be done manually, or are there other things?
The main claim to fame cannot be this is outputting bit perfect versus that one is not.
Because that's what.
You need to
I
do
don't wanna
that.
pick one of them, but that's
Yeah,
what
you
was
need to do
implied
apples
in
to
the
apples.
rule.
So you would need to. You got to close iTunes and change it and open it up. Then you're going to get bit perfect out of straight iTunes. I mean, the other thing is you don't have to do anything manually. So they're probably going down the path of switching sample rates. And if I start at 44.1 and then go to 24.96, iTunes will not be bit perfect unless you close it, open it, make the changes, and all that. Whereas Amara will be able to do it with no user intervention.
Well, the demo, they did a few demos. The one I remembered the most was just 44 16-bit sample. They would so as well that 44 16 track played, they just went back and forth between. They said, okay, well here's iTunes, here's Amara, and the Amara did. It was subtle, but it was noticeable.
Yeah, that's an apples to apples, and like I said, a lot of people think the sound quality is better. So I mean. But when it is apples to apples, then you can have a real comparison. But iTunes by itself without Amara is bit perfect, as long as you make the manual adjustments. So if you were both outputting bit perfect, then you had a real good apples to apples, and you got to hear the difference.
Well, I think that's what I got to go back and ask you: was the output? Okay,
I'm guessing it was. They're not trying to hocus pocus.
Let me ask you this: is the audio output from iTunes on a Mac Mini by default bit perfect, or do you have to go in and make some? Like I know on Windows 7, I read that where you're suggesting you have to go in and make changes.
Okay.
Do you have to do this
by default on a Mac, I can't tell you what your audio MIDI setting is going to be, but I'm guessing it's going to be 44.1. So if you're playing CDs, it'll be fine. You have to have your volume all the way up. Yeah. So I'm 99% sure you'll be fine. It's capable of it right out of the box. So.
Yeah, I think what I'll do, time permitting, I'll go back and talk to them and say, okay, why? I think your thing sounded better. Tell me specifically why is it better? Is it just a bit perfect thing, or is there other secret sauce?
Yeah, it's not a bit perfect thing. It's not, and I don't think they'll say that it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think, because it's been measured and measured and measured over and over, and the bits come out the same. So. Anyone else? Yes.
For the sake of the people who may be watching this recording in the future, you might want to mention what your URL is.
Sure. Computeraudiophile.com. You can type it in directly, Google it, it'll come up first, or type the name in close with a PH or an F and you'll get there. Doesn't matter.
Have you experimented yet with any of the room equalization digital hardware and how that goes into the chain?
I haven't yet. The question is about the room equalization and digital hardware, and there are some products out there doing it, like on a Mac. I haven't even gone down the path yet. Traditionally in this hobby, as you know, it's been, kind of the redheaded stepchild. So I am interested, and it's neat. I think it's very difficult to do correctly or do so it sounds well. But yeah, I'm interested in it. I haven't tried it. Is that it from everyone? All right, we'll wrap up a little early then. Thanks everybody for coming. It's awesome. It's good to meet you guys. Thank you.